Thanks for tuning in to the Peoplz and Dragons. The following presentation is the result of active players in the community who dictate the actions of these characters by way of the Peoplz and Dragons interactive RPG game show. If you're enjoying the content, then please like, share, and maybe subscribe. If you want to join in on the action, visit our website at pndrpg.com. Haven City, an ugly city. Episode 13, Big Tank, Act 4. We see the light hovering slowly over to a gravely wounded R-Type X missing both of his arms, when suddenly a giant sunken battleship from the bottom of the now empty ocean is hurled at the light, crashing onto it, buying R-Type time as Tempest arrives at R-Type's side and supports him. We see Chronicle floating above them magnetically. He then begins to bind the ship around the light, encasing it. R-Type X performs Ayazadawagia, encasing himself in a tower of black energy surrounded by mirrors. R-Type X invokes Malic Judgment, calling forth a golden lotus flower appearing inside of a massive mirror fixed over R-Type. Emerging from the unfurling golden petals of the mystical lotus flower, we see the Judge, Malic R-Type, pouring healing energies of the planet upon him. Though this doesn't restore R-Type's human arms, instead, in their place, much more resilient arms made entirely of life energy, faintly glowing white. Outside of the tower, we see Tempest absorbing all of the time he can from every living thing and non-living thing around him to hasten R-Type's healing maneuver, and it is successful. R-Type X gathers himself, rising to both of his feet. Tempest tells R-Type X to go back in. We see many sea creatures stirring in the oceanless sea around Tempest begin to grow old and wither as he siphons their time, putting it into R-Type, filling him with vigor, breathing twice as fast as every second in the day. Just then, the entire battleship is vaporized in a flash of light, and Tempest, R-Type X, and Chronicle flicker and reappear directly in front of the light. The Instigator squints his eyes at Chronicle and mumbles to himself, "I can do better." The light taps Chronicle on the forehead, completely vaporizing him with absolute star energy, erasing him from existence. The Instigator then brings up a HUD on his screen that has been tracking all of the time Tempest has gathered and stored since receiving his abilities. With his bony fingers, he turns a dial. The Instigator's voice rings inside of Tempest's head like an intercom. The Instigator tells him that he was always his favorite, but too many obstacles stunted his growth. Tempest, confused and paralyzed from the light's seemingly telekinetic hold on him, searches for the source of the voice. The light opens its hand and absorbs all of the time from Tempest until Tempest is a shriveled up old man, his hair turning wispy and thin, just like his grip on life itself. Tempest collapses, falling into the sand, some of his bones turning into a fine powder. The light then carves out a square miles into the bottom of the dried up ocean, and with the wave of his hand sends Tempest plummeting into its depths before filling the hole back up, burying him alive. R-Type X, stuck in place, cannot believe the power of this being as he tries to free himself from its hold. The light turns to R-Type. The Instigator wants to see R-Type X reach his full potential and triggers the fulfillment energy inside of him. R-Type feels the evil Takena energy growing inside of him, making him exceptionally stronger. The light releases its hold as R-Type begins to power up uncontrollably and erupt. But instead of using this power, R-Type X purges it all out of his system by casting it out himself. It has become clear to him that this power is false energy, that he no longer wants to be a part of him. R-Type X collapses from the displacement of energy, creating a massive void within himself. He had no idea that the fulfillment had anchored itself so deep into his energy signature. The instigator, extremely frustrated, looks at the time, and he sees that it's running short. He then turns and looks at the scientist who was watching the experiment along with him, Zemina, the instigator's last and loyal member of their group. The instigator sneers and asks her why she conditioned the R-Type to be so proud. Zemina says nothing. An epiphany falls upon the instigator and he says, "I know what will do the trick." R-Type X struggles to his knees when suddenly all that Jazz and Ali appear in front of him. Confused by their surroundings and not noticing the light standing behind them, they spot R-Type X and immediately run over to him, trudging over the wet sands. But just before they reach him, the light fires a beam that vaporizes Ali. The explosion obliterates half of all that Jazz's body, sending her entrails and body matter flying all over R-Type X's face. Her upper body with exposed ribcage tumbles over to R-Type's feet. R-Type's eyes widen and he begins to scream, causing the entire city to shake and rumble. The instigator turns to Zemina while smiling and says, "See, this is the ultimate G-Type." Zemina looks sorrowful and looks back at the screen. We see Timbrus Gray and Virus Baseborn walking through the alleyway of the Shade District. Behind them, a couple dozen of slaves that survived the truck crash from earlier. Virus learns that Timbrus was once a slave of the caretakers himself and gains a little respect for Timbrus's courage to be able to escape that type of scenario. Timbrus also respects Virus for not abandoning the slaves no matter what, and the two begin to consider each other allies. With his ultimate reflexive instincts and his use of the alien device's fickle effect to bestow deja vu, Timbrus has managed to lead Virus and the slaves stealthily through the district, avoiding any and all threats. Timbrus turns and says, "Express." Virus couldn't hear him. Timbrus says again, Virus asks him to repeat. Timbrus finishes chewing his Dizzy Whiz Fizz candy, a bar filled with chewy cake batter and salted peanut butter goodness, and tells Virus Baseborn that the expressway taking them out of this shithole is just around the corner. Timbrus then wipes his hands on the bottom of his gray hoodie. They reach the highway exit but discover a giant force field encasing the entire Shade District, shielding the district from the chaos mist and exit. The device in Timbrus's hands begin to glow, and he remembers that the district is being preserved. Preserved? Virus asks. So we're safe? Timbrus turns and points, and Virus looks at tension growing between the many self-proclaimed alpha mutants congregating in the district. Suddenly, a trio of bazooka-wielding marauders, the Bazooka Bros, from the roof fire a mini nuke into the sea of Alpha G-types, blowing up half of the entire block. The entire district of G-types break out in all-out war. A short fat man hovering in an egg-shaped mech, weapons engaged, begins firing a rapid volley of orange laser beams at Virus Baseborn as he deflects a few with his sword of fire and then creates an ice wall in front of him. Coming around the corner of the wall of ice is a G-type with a massive arm made of diamonds who lunges and swings at Virus, but he sidesteps it as his fist crashes into the ice wall, crumbling it. Timbrus, invisible to him, stabs the man in the neck and with both hands pulls his knife across his throat, spraying blue blood all across his gray hoodie. A massive 8-wheeler made of nothing but fire comes barreling through the street, driven by a fish-faced fishmonger running countless G-types over while tossing grenades out of his driver's seat window until it is lifted up by a giant humanoid elephant man who proceeds to hurl it across the sky. Virus sees the blazing truck headed near them, and he musters up a giant tornado to lift him, Timbers, and all the slaves upward 30 yards and out of the way. Two women with mechanical bird wings swoop through the air, grabbing Timbers away. One bird lady binds Timbers with her sharp metal talon feet while attempting to mug him violently, running his hoodie pockets, as the other throws a flurry of slashes and scratches. Timbers pulls a pistol he lifted off of someone a second ago and blows her brains out, sending the bird lady falling out of the sky. Fixing his gaze upon the one carrying him, she gets confused as she cannot see him but feels him in her talons. She lets go and drops Timbers as he lands on the back of a Sequadran, a half-man, half-horse like that found in fiction, but this was the result of cybernetic transfemoral augmentation surgery called Gallop Formation. The Sequadran leaps through and around G-types while gutting any and everyone with its double-edged vibro-axe and doesn't even know that he has passengers aboard. Timbers tries to regain his balance and stay on the Sequadran's back while he fires his pistol at oncoming targets. We see Virus Baseborn juggling himself and 24 slaves with his wind manipulation when suddenly he is gripped by a telekinetic force and slammed into the ground face first. All the slaves fall from the sky, some to their deaths, some with broken legs. Virus is picked back up as a tall, slender man walks up with his hand out and calls him by his name. Virus Baseborn, I waited for this day. After years of fuck, before he could finish his monologue, Virus lifts him up off of the ground with his own, more superior telekinetic, and the two have each other floating in mid-air. Virus's willpower is too much for his opponent, and he breaks out of his grip and applies extreme Virus's willpower is too much for his opponent, and he breaks out of their grip and applies extreme telekinetic pressure on his target until all of his limbs snap and break, crushing him like a soda can within clenched fists. Virus then hurls his crushed corpse into an oncoming G-type. He then spins off of an attacker and slashes him straight down his back, then impales another man in the back who wasn't even fighting him but was in his way, as Virus makes his way to the remaining slaves that he had dropped, cutting down everyone in his path. Virus reaches the surviving 20 slaves, stabs his sword into the concrete, lights it on fire, then telekinetically carves out the ground around him, followed by an immense telekinetic explosion under them that launches the carved street into the air, carrying him and the slaves with it. He then telekinetically hovers him and the slaves over to a safer rooftop. We cut to Timbers Gray, scuffling with an enemy on the back of the Sequadran. Timbers throws a hook, then a haymaker, disorienting his target, then stabs them where the armor is exposed. Suddenly, the Sequadran's bladed tail decapitates the man, and he flies off. Just then, Timbers in the Sequadran is then lifted up into the air by a giant kraken tentacle that has emerged from an ocean summoned in the middle of the massacre by a group of rogue summoners. The tentacle constricts and kills the Sequadran and hurls both it and Timbers toward a building. Timbers goes flying through a 4th-story window. Laying on his back for a bit, Timbers rolls over to his knees and brushes himself off when he finds himself surrounded by a group of G-types who were laying low. Timbers puts his hand up as their leader approaches with his rifle drawn and aimed square at Timbers' chest. There's only so much strategizing one can do with no fighting skills, a knife, and at gunpoint with an excruciating headache from constantly turning invisible. Timbers is in a bind. Suddenly, Timbers begins to act like he's falling. Whoa, 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 as the entire building vanishes from under their feet, and the gunmen react with panic, looking for something to hold on to so that they don't plummet 4 stories down to their deaths. After a moment passes, the building reappears, as does Timbers, who is now beside the G-Type attempting to mug him of his gun when he realizes the gun is literally glued to his hands. You have glue powers? You have glue powers? What are you doing here? You in particular, what are you doing here? That's mega lame. There's nothing alpha about that at all. The G-Type gets angry and spits adhesive into his face. Timbers stumbling back. Suddenly, bursting through the roof above him, Virus lands beside Timbers, grabs him, and jumps out of a nearby window as the entire building explodes. Timbers and Virus hit the ground hard and roll over on their backs, writhing with pain. With a nose that begins bleeding, Timbers taps Virus and the boy, and they all go invisible as G-Types battle it out all around them while not seeing them in their vulnerable state. Virus and Timbers both agree that escaping is not possible at the moment, and they should find a place to wait it out and let it all blow over. We see a giant 3-story tall furry beast swinging its claws at smart Marla as she evades, dodges, and runs along its arms, leaping into the air with a giant arm and fist made of golden numbers. She punches its head almost clear off, breaking its neck and demolishing half of its face. The giant beast crashes to the ground, landing on a few poor souls, killing them. He tells Virus he has an expertly patented, amazingly smart, and dazzling plan that will accommodate all of Virus's 24 slaves. Virus pulls a young boy and the last of the surviving slaves closer to him. Timbers goes, "Oh," and tells Virus to follow him. They make it to the body of the giant furry beast while fending off attackers. Virus asks Timbers what his ultra plan is, and Timbers tells him that they will cut open this monster's belly and hide inside of it. Virus plunges his blade through a person's neck, turns to Timbers as gallons of blood spray onto his face, and says, "That's a fantastic plan." Timbers laughs, evades a wolf-like G-Type with 2 heads trying to bite his face off, and guts it like a pig. Virus runs over to the giant beast, releases his sword from his hands, and using his telekinesis, uses the sword to slice open the stomach, freeing his hands up as he and Timbers defend their location, as well as the little boy, until the belly is completely cut open. Virus takes off his long coat and begins to display his incredible combat mastery. A multi-armed man wielding various legendary swords collected across the world comes swinging at Virus, who sidesteps the first 4 slashes and throws a haymaker that knocks the man clear out with 1 blow. Virus telekinetically grabs the swords and uses them to fight other attackers and assist with cutting the beast's belly. Virus is then grabbed from behind, but flips his attacker over his shoulder, stomps on his neck, and summons a bolt of lightning from his hands, blowing their head. Timbers, while blinking in and out of visibility of those he sets his gaze upon, moves swiftly, strategically, and elusively through all of his enemy's peripheral vision and stabs every vital organ he can reach for a quick, clean, and efficient kill. Suddenly, 4 tiny people jump onto his neck and begin punching his neck with their tiny fists. Timbers reaches for one and tosses it off of him. Suddenly, a man attacks Timbers with his massively large black beard. It forms into various sharp shapes and lops off Timbers' finger, all while one mini person tries to climb up into his eyelid as the other 2 attempt to jam a dirty syringe into his neck. Timbers, under attack by so many things, smacks away all of the mini people off of his body, then holds out his knife and calls for Virus as Virus looks and ignites his knife on fire. Timbers then brings his knife down onto the face of the bearded man and begins stabbing it over and over and over until he realizes the beard is the G-Type and the man is just a prop. Timbers can't help from laughing for a second before he is thrown to the ground, fighting with the bearded G-type. Timbers feels something inside of the beard and decides to turn the beard invisible, revealing a tiny woman inside of the beard operating it like a beard. Timbers feels something inside of the beard and decides to turn the beard invisible, revealing a tiny old woman inside of it operating the beard like a Gundam. Timbers begins stabbing into the center of the beard as blood starts gushing out every which way. Virus calls out to him, telling him that the belly is open, but the traumatized and frantic Timbers continues to stab and stab and stab at the weird, bearded lady pilot thing until Virus pulls him off of the bloody beard and pulls him into the body, Timbers still stabbing at the air. We see Virus, Timbers, and the slave sitting inside of the wet and warm corpse of the giant G-type as destruction ensues all around them. Virus asks, "Are you okay?" Timbers shouts, "It was a beard lady, man!" before he realizes that Virus was talking to the boy. Timbers' stomach growls and he goes to reach into his hoodie when he realizes that those bird ladies stole his last 2 Dizzy Fizz Whiz candy bars. We see a chaotic Haven district running rampant with raging and anger-driven civilians breathing in a dense, gray mist as they go wild, attacking everything in sight. Some can be seen driven so mad by the chaos mist and other chemicals in the air that they are bashing their own heads into walls to kill the building, but end up killing themselves. We then see the tall, lean, and old Myra Dyra in her long, old-fashioned coat walking along the rooftops, slowly looking down at her work as gray mist seeps from her coat and over the rooftops like a fog machine. We zoom onto her face as she adjusts her gold-trimmed monocle. In its reflection, we see a Survey-Day cultist bashing his head into the head of another corpse. We see a soft, wrinkled smile appear over Myra's face. Thanks for watching Peoplz and Dragons, the interactive RPG game show. I encourage everyone to jump into our comment section to participate in the lore contests, as well as visit our Patreon page to learn what perks come with your support for our machine. Peace.